Hey, what's up? How's it? Aloha, welcome to Culturized. It is me, Makani. Thank you so much for joining us. This is the space that we've created. This is where we come to talk, share, and learn culture, whether it's ethnic, whether it's social, whether it's native. If you ever had, or you ever wanted to learn about cultures that make up Hawaii, this is the place to do it. If you're watching on YouTube, comment down below, hit the subscribe notification, do all those things, validate our existence, let us know we're here. If you have anything you want to say, let us know, any ideas. If you're listening on our audio podcast, tell your friends about it. If you're watching us on TV, mahalo for doing that. Before I introduce to you, I'm humbled and privileged for them to be here, but we are a cultured show, so we have the Kanaka Kid to start off our space for us.
O kamala malamo oni hau amalie amalie ua pai kainu maila gala ona we ke kai ona we kala o puna e ka wahine o kalua no I kila wea.
Mahalo Ilono. Kanaka Kid is his YouTube. he's got some merch now if you want to get t-shirts from him. Aloha is my culture is that one. So mahalo to Lono for setting our space for us. I'm humbled. I'm privileged to be sitting with these two Kanaka, not only two Kanaka, but husband and wife, makua, kumu, musicians, all these titles, Kalehua and Mana. Right off the bat, what is the most important title for you?
Makuahine.
Oh, I like it. You got it. You know it. Like I think the other day we were talking about hina, right? And we just the tie to us, such a matriarchal society. Makuahine for you.
Makuahine.
Oh, yeah. Nice. As we get into it, you're very cultured. So first of all, wow. Tell those that are watching what is inside here.
A few days ago, we were blessed and gifted by a gentleman by the name of Tom Breeze and his Ohana Breeze from the Big Island.
Okay.
They saw some of the videos of us going over to Germany and Malama Kupono, so they sent us a care package of items that we could use on our journey and our travels. And that right there is ʻiliahi.
If wow, I what do you say, right? As rare as this is, but it's coming back though, right? There's
yes.
a lot of people planting ʻiliahi.
Yes.
Let us know if you have ʻiliahi and you want to know what it is. Comment down below. But mahalo for this. I love this. This is a very Hawaiian concept. And your folks Manao, when we come together like this, when you visit somebody's hale, why do we do these things? Why do we bring gifts? So what is that a thing where you should always do? So those that are watching, right?
Yeah, I would say absolutely. It's our tradition of Okipa, and when you enter into other spaces, you want to acknowledge that and build relationships and understand that people's homes are a sacred space.
I love that. See, and we sometimes we in modern day we forget to do that, right? We forget to do these things. You never go to a kupuna's house empty-handed, and not just kupuna, anybody's house. So people, they like to use that disclaimer, right? Oh no, they wasn't kupuna. Come on. So I love this. It's such a Hawaiian concept. So you never want to go to anybody's house empty-handed. Now, does that go in your folks' manao? Does that go for everyone, even if they're your friends, even if you see them on a regular basis?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Make note of that, you guys. Now let's, as we go into local protocol. What high school you went?
I went to the high school on the hill.
The high school, I love it. Listen,
Kamehameha Kapalama.
You folks are dominating the Culturized podcast right now. That's just how it goes. Kamehameha School for you.
I'll probably be the only one so far, maybe ever. I graduated from Clover Park High School in Tacoma, Washington.
But see, Tacoma, I just gotta say, the state of Washington should have been the ninth island. It's not Vegas, right? It's not. Yesterday we had Kuʻulei Bernie from Papa'ololokahi. I think she was, I forget where, somewhere on the continent. So high school, Tacoma, Washington. There was a lot of Hawaiians back then already, right?
There's probably a handful. My parents, we moved to Washington State in the late 70s, early 80s. So my mom, she danced hula for Auntie Myrtle K. Hula.
Wow.
Hila, Auntie Myrtle.
Wow. Okay, so this is the weird thing. I don't know why we never ran into each other, because my parents, we moved to Puyallup. No, nobody knows. Yeah. We were in Puyallup. My parents were like, I don't know if they were building churches or they were just really I love God people. Yeah, I have cousins that live up in Bonnie Lake.
Okay. Yep.
But Puyallup at the time was nobody.
Oh yeah.
We were the only brown people in the neighborhood, like the first neighborhood. Of course, they thought we were Mexican, right?
Yeah.
It's funny that we never ran into each other, because I remember we were looking for people.
Looking for the slippers.
Exactly. So if you're joining us, welcome to Culture Rise. We're sitting with Kalehua and Mana, and the kuleana that they carry is amazing. You're gonna want to stay close for this, but we want to get to know who they are first. You see them around, you see them on TV, you see them doing all these really, really good things for the lahui. So stay close if you want to learn a little bit more about culture right here on Culturized.
Bringing you what matters. Viewers can receive the Star Advertiser Digital Full Access subscription for just $9.95 per month. Go to staradvertiser.com and click on subscribe. Use the code AHAITHING. For all your money needs, Hawaiian Financial Federal Credit Union is here for you. Visit HIFICU.com.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome back to Culturized. It is me, Makani. Mahalo for joining us. We are sitting with some very important people, my good friends. Of course, we're talking about titles to them, but there's so many different titles. Sometimes I don't like to use the word title. I just like to say kuleana. You guys have lots of kuleana. First of all, I got to thank our good friends from Kapakava supplying the social lubricant. And here's another one. And a lot of people ask about, because it's flavored kava. But as we know, and I was taught, as Hawaiians, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, in the healing world, we Hawaiians we didn't drink ava for recreational purposes, right? It was all ceremony and medicine. Unlike our cousins from the South Pacific that always call you, be like, come on, let's go mix. And you're like, whoa. But I gotta thank them. You want to try the coconut?
My kaiwa.
Okay. So as we move on, so we're talking about growing up and where we're from. Where did you grow up?
Māʻili, Waiʻanae.
Wow. Did you? Okay, so what is the term? Are you a lifer?
Hola, always.
Wow, from kindergarten.
No, I was raised in Māʻili, and I went to Kamehameha in 7th grade.
Oh.
So no, my Māʻili roots is my forever lifer.
And you busted. You caught the bus to Kamehameha.
Yeah.
Wow. Not even you did. Did you want to be a boarder? Did they let boarders that far? Well, that far, that close?
Did. Yeah, they did. But truth be told, I wanted to be in Waiʻanae. I would have wanted to follow my cousins. I was raised, both sides of my families were raised on 2 streets adjacent to one another. So there's 10 of us when I went to elementary in the same grade, just in one grade.
Really?
Yes, 10 of us.
Can you imagine all 10 of you go be boarders? So I love the fact that you were specific about Māʻili, right? Growing up, were you that specific? Were you, if somebody said, where are you from, would you just say Waiʻanae?
I've always said Māʻili.
I like it. See, I like this new, lately you start to hear people. It's like people from Kalihi and Lilihi, right? I'm not from Kalihi, I'm from Liliha, right? I'm not from the west side, I'm from Nanakuli. Not Nanakuli, but Third Road. I always, for some reason, I like that because that's when they understand these concepts of who I represent, right? So growing up in Māʻili, going to Kamehameha, what was that like? We all know the town and country, right? Was it weird? Was it culture shock? Was it like, oh, right? At
Absolutely.
7th grade?
I mean, I went from a school that was really small, and I knew all my classmates because they were my neighbors. And then I had to get on a bus with a whole bunch of different kids. And it was if you were at Kamehameha, but you came from Waiʻanae, I would say it was a very different experience, right? I mean,
How long is that ride?
I want to say it was probably maybe hour 15 at that time.
So what time did the bus? What time did you have to catch the bus?
We used to leave Waiʻanae, I want to say like 5:30.
Really?
Yeah.
7th grade, waking up, what, like 4 o'clock? You gotta prepare. That is amazing. So now that you're going all the way to town, what was some things you thought of that were just obviously different, but at the same time, whoa, right?
The socioeconomic differences was obvious on the Hill. That was probably the most obvious stark contrast from coming out of Waiʻanae.
What was that like to think about as you got older? Because you're thinking exactly that. You're coming from Waiʻanae and then you're going up into the heights, right? Kapalama, and you see that. Was it something that you thought about often? Like, oh, these kids over here.
I think after a while it became really evident that there was those kinds of differences. Like one good example is I had classmates where maybe one parent worked at the school and they had siblings, but they all drove separate cars, right? 3 cars. And that's not our lived experience, right? In Waiʻanae, we had 1 car and my mom was catching a bus to Manoa to work.
I remember I used to teach at Iolani School. I'm like riding my bike and these kids are pulling up in Range Rovers. What the heck? If you're joining us, welcome to Culturize. We're sitting down with two very important people to the Lahui, Kalehua and Mana, and we're getting to know them, and I know we want to get into their kuleana. So if you're joining us, this is Culturized.
Ashley is America's #1 furniture store. We have everything you need for your home. Let the experts at King Windward help you out of your current loan or lease and into a new vehicle. Visit kingwindwardnissan.com.
Hey, welcome back to Culturize. It is me, Makani, as we sit with my two nahoa. Growing up in Tacoma at the time, that was the 70s, right?
80s, yeah.
What was that like, knowing that you were away from Hawaii and knowing that you were living on the continent? What was that like for you? Let me ask this question. Growing up in the household away from Hawaii, did you do cultural practices and things like that?
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, my mom got into hula because she ran into Auntie Myrtle. So we always had hula in our house and mele Hawaii in the house always.
What's the first thing you pili'd to when it comes to na mea Hawaii? Was it music?
It was music.
Wow.
Yeah. I was always sitting down next to my mom's leg when she was at a hula practice.
I love that. Yeah. Okay, so a lot of us know you as so your music was it traditional Hawaiian music first that you preferred?
Yeah.
Or was it nice?
Yes.
See and I know you guys are like, oh, I gotta look familiar, right? Because I think we first officially met when you were doing your first CD came out.
Yes.
Growing up, and this is a question for both of you, and some people think it's a weird question, but when did you realize you were Kanaka? Right? Because, growing up, our parents, you this, you that, and I guess more so, when did we realize our kuleana? Because it took me almost like 30 to 40 years to realize, oh, that's why they keep telling me, right? What was it for both? When did you realize, Mana?
I think it was early on. Like nice. in my house, my first name is Norman, but ever since I was born, my grandparents always called me Mana. So that was my name, everybody. And then when I played, I think it was T-ball, when I was like 7 or 8 years old, everybody else started calling me Mene. So my parents was like, no, we're just gonna go with Norman from now on. That was the kind of like, it was kind of, there was a difference in cultures and language at that point.
This is every time I film a season, there's this theme that happens, and so far, this theme has been all of our English names, which is really weird, right? Po'okela's like, they called me Jordan, but my tutu would call me Po'okela, and just the power of an inoa.
Yeah.
When did you realize the power of your inoa, right? Or is it every time tutu called you out?
Yeah.
Wow. With that name, how do you feel there's a kuleana to uphold? I mean, because we have our last name, right? And that's already kuleana, right?
Yeah.
Because our parents and our grandparents give us inoa. Was that heavy for you to carry that? Like, I have to be mana.
Yeah.
What do you think when somebody says your name, or when you say your name? Do you like, this is what
it carries the heaviness of wanting to live up to not just the name, but what that name meant to my grandfather. Yeah.
I love that. For you too, when did you realize that, oh, okay, yes, I'm Hawaiian, but this is the reason why?
So I would say because I was raised in Waiʻanae, everybody looked like me. Our families had similar kind of traditions. When I went to Kamehameha, same thing, right? I was always around populations of ʻŌiwi. But for me, it really was my first Papaʻolelo Hawaii class.
Ooh, and like we all say, that's the connection. All the answers are there. How old were you your first Papaʻolelo?
7th grade.
Wow. If somebody that's just, because again, we talked about earlier, some people are like, I'm too old already. Is there such thing as I'm too old to learn ʻŌlelo?
Never. You're never too old.
Nice. Remember that, you guys. So let's take all of that. You folks grew up in your adult life, musician, kumu, all these titles you have. But right now, you guys, how did this kuleana come about? So there's all these artifacts. There's ʻiwi kupuna. There's all these things that I had no idea that were not even in Hawaii. The last thing you guys did was, what did you bring back? If you guys were watching the news, you folks were part of this hui that brought, was it bones?
Yeah, it was the remains of 58 of our ancestors, ʻiwi kupuna.
Wow. How did they get to wherever they were? Where were they?
They were right when we picked them up. It was from institutions like universities and museums.
How did they get them?
Okay, so back in the early stages of when the foreigners started coming. And I don't know if you've watched the movie Django Unchained yet.
Yeah.
There's a scene where Leonardo DiCaprio has that po'o, that skull. That's the mind frame of people that were coming to Hawaii in the late 1700s, early 1800s. They wanted to prove that the sizes of the skulls meant that they were superior.
That's a perfect analogy.
I use that all the time because people ask that same question all day, every day.
So they were saying the size of the bigger the skull, the more superior.
No, they were saying the thicker the skull, the less room for a brain.
So what,
in a lot of what their studies.
So now I'm thinking about, there's a collection at Bishop Museum called the Sullivan Collection. And it's these actual, plaster. They made a plaster of people's heads, and that's what they were studying. I'm totally interested now. I'm going to dive into this. If you're joining us, this is Culturized. We're talking about their kuleana right now, bringing back bones, bringing back artifacts, bringing back things that belong to us that have been around the world. And I always wanted to know why or how these things got to where they were. It's like somebody coming to your house and saying, hey, I like that. I'm not going to give them back to you. That's what's happening right now on Culturized.
Culturized, brought to you by Beachside Roofing, the leaders. Elevate your home's exterior to a whole nother level with Windows Hawaii low maintenance, energy efficient select siding. Call 808-671-0808 today. Ridgel Kent Insurance, protecting your legacy.
Hey, what's up? How's it? Aloha. Welcome back to Culturized. We are sitting down and talking artifacts. We're talking ʻiwi kupuna. We're talking about all these things let me get you guys mana'o on Kalehua first, on a museum. See, for me personally, I've always run into the things where I like to preserve, I like to perpetuate, I like to practice. But sometimes, I'll give you a good example. Those of you on Lanai, they said, oh, this was a fishing village. We're going to put a plaque over here and tell people this was a. I was like, no, it is. Like, it is a. When did it become was? Is that how a lot of museums are? They want to prepare. What did you guys put on museums?
I mean, I have really limited experience with museums, and I feel like as Kanaka, we're living people with a living culture, and like everything else, things are going to evolve, and that once we start to put our culture in a category where it goes into a museum, you start to look at it as if it's something that's dead or extinct.
See, sometimes it kind of freaks me out because it's like you're looking at your culture, but it's almost portrayed as, oh, these used to be these people, right? These used to be these people. But with that said, now that you guys are traveling, so this 58 kupuna that you brought back, so people were just, was it like a thing? Like they were just collecting? Like I just like how you said in Django, right? I want this to prove to people, or were people taking it to actually study it?
I'm sure it's a little bit of both, right? I mean, I cannot imagine what the mindset was of people that long ago or even the recent past, but I think there's always an interest to study, and sometimes that starts to dehumanize the material by which you study.
Is it to the point where people that have these things, is it, I like to say, are they feeling guilty, or are you folks having to call and say, hey, I know you have something, we need it back? Or are they actually getting in touch with you folks and saying, hey,
I think it's a little bit of both now. We have the privilege and honor to be learning from our kumu, Halealoha IL.
Yes.
And of course, the kumu before him, Uncle Edward and Auntie Pualani. They started 32 years ago with this. Wow. And they just, back then, it wasn't emails. They sent thousands of letters to every institution.
Wow.
32 years ago.
So this was a huge process.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Is it, are people that have these items, are they more adept now to giving it back?
From what we've seen, there are a few institutions that absolutely refuse to.
Really?
But on the other hand, there are some that, because of our most recent trip and the coverage that we had, institutions was reaching out like, hey, we have some of your stuff. We have some of your ancestors.
Since you guys have been doing this, what's one of the items or things that were returned that both of you were like, whoa? Like, I mean, all of them are whoa, but have you come across something that was like, whoa, this is intense?
I mean, for us, repatriation, I mean, bringing back mea kapu and, but the priority is always the kupuna, right? So for us, the reason we do what we do is to return kupuna to their moeloa. That's the responsibility of a mo'opuna.
Once you get these items and you get these kupuna back, where do you put them?
So,
or it depends.
I want to say that our honor really is to just be a part of bringing them home. And then the koleana becomes those mo'o in the communities to whom these kupuna are from.
So you guys actually, so that's a lot of work so you're going there, receiving these. Now, can you guys hang out for a little while more? Because I'm going to ask you guys a lot of more questions. If you're watching on Culturize, I'm like, this is entirely for me now. So if you're watching, you can just eavesdrop. This is interesting to me. And it should be interesting to you. Hit the notification button, subscribe, do everything you can to do that. So we got to thank all of our sponsors. Thank you, folks, for being here. Thank you, folks, for what you're doing. And everything that you do is bringing them back. So this, my friends, is Culturized. Hey, what's going on? Welcome back to Culturized, the extended version. I know you guys are like, man, don't stop now. So if you're watching on the TV, go ahead and jump on YouTube and find us at the Culturized Podcast, because we're going to continue this conversation. We're talking to my very good friends, Kalehua and Mana. What do you explain to our friends what exactly you folks do right now in any of you? Because it's like you brought up the word repatriation, you bringing things back. In your folks, Mana, what are you guys doing? So, I know it's
that's a deep question. So I really just want to take it aback a few years,
please.
Right? And so really, we believe ourselves to be kanaka malama iwi kupuna, right? And so our responsibility, our opportunity rather, to go on repatriation trips is really recent for us, but we have really been doing it as a family. It's the only thing we know how to do. And so I would say about 10 years ago, my husband had the opportunity, and he was taken under the wing by someone who was Ohana to our Ohana Punanala, right? So like, I feel like everything takes us back to that space of when we were doing Punanala and all that connections with her, right? And so that's a really good microcosm of people coming for the purpose of educating their keiki in Olelo Hawaii, and then all these other things being born out of that.
It's such a Hawaiian concept. I love that. And that's why I'm always intrigued by you folks, because we know each other from a certain nucleus, but now we're like, but we still keep that pico, right? And we still go out. So did it feel like kuleana as far as like somebody gave you kuleana, right? I was like, okay, this, you need to be malama iwi kupuna, or was it a mixture of we're Kanaka, this is what we have to do?
Yeah, it definitely a mixture. But now that, we've been doing this as a kuleana for the past 10 years, I have the honor to look back and realize that my kupuna has been nudging me gently and hard slap sometimes to be where I am today, 10 years later.
So this is something that you always, and it's a habit that I do because of you. We've had conversations every time I drive around. So here's something for you guys, and correct me if I'm wrong. Every time I drive around islands or Oʻahu, whatever moku it is, I look for these little patches of la'i and little ahu that looks like ahu, and you were explaining to me that's where ʻiwi would be if they're doing construction somewhere. I think we were at when they were developing International Marketplace, and I remember I think we were with the kids. I think we were doing ka'ahele Waiʻanae, I think, and you were telling me about you said, oh, see that little square, that's where I work at, and all the construction's going on, and like, what's there? You're like, oh, there's bones over there. What? And I think it's interesting that the general population, we don't know those things. We don't know. So when somebody does construction in Hawaii, are you still doing that? Do you go in and, because they basically got to check with you guys, right?
Yeah, we're involved in some
I always remember that every time I go, I also like, see that over there? That's Iwi Kupono over there. He's like, how you know? So I always do that. Now you guys are in a whole similar but whole nother level. Is anything coming up for you guys of bringing things back? What's coming up? Because you guys are traveling soon. Where are you guys headed to?
We're in the planning stages of 2 trips coming up in the next couple of months.
And that's to bring...
Yes.
Wow. Yeah. What? Where are you guys headed off to?
We're going back to the United Kingdom, and I believe more countries in Europe also.
Who do you think, in your folks, who has more of our stuff? Or are we just all over?
Well, that's something that Haliloa Ayau has stated. The 32 years that he's been doing this, they brought back over 6,000 iwi kupuna.
Really?
And he said the good and bad of that is you don't know whether to pat yourself on the back because you've done a good job, or maybe you just scratching the surface because we don't know.
That brought me to my next question. It's like, it's such an impressive number, and at the same time you're like, but that's 6,000 people that we didn't even know was taken from home.
Yeah.
So do you think there's ever going to be an end to it where we're going to be able to get everything back?
I think that's our hope.
That's hope.
That's what we work for. And I think the reason for us that we do it as a family is chances are we'll never know in our lifetime, and it'll have to be a torch that our keiki.
And I was going to say our keiki. Wow. Now I want to get into the protocol side of it. We know when you handle anything like that, there has to be protocol. I'm always curious about this. When you're going away to another country and you're receiving these iwi kupuna back, you're also doing protocol there, and as well as when you come back.
We do private ceremonies. We do. I mean, for us, it's always important. That's part of our culture, regardless of what your practice is. Ceremony is always a very integral and foundational part of that. And so it's required, and it's what we do.
I see. I love the fact you said it's required. That's what we do. I think about that sometimes when I do protocol. It's like I'm finding myself explaining to organizers. I said, "Okay, do you want me to bless just your door?" I said, because I was taught traditionally, so it's going to take a little bit more than that. So, do you want the media protocol or do you want traditional protocol? And because they always ask us, because it's more private. So you actually carry out I can't even imagine what that's like to be holding this ʻiwi kupuna and having to, this may be a question you can answer or not, but protocol, are you apologizing to them or are you saying welcome home or both?
I would say all of the above, right? For us, these kupuna have been gone for more than a century, and their only experience with humans are a really dehumanizing process, right? That kind of kaumaha and eha. And so our private ceremonies are meant to establish relationships. It's meant to gain the trust of our kupuna, so that they know that we have this genuine intent of taking on a responsibility to bring them home, and most importantly, put them back in the ground.
That's so heavy. When you come across ʻiwi kupuna, somebody calls and say, is it just ʻiwi, or does it come with like, this is the name of this person, or does that or do you even know? Have you ever come across that? Like you actually knew, whoever had it at the time actually knew who these people were. Did you ever come across that?
Not in my experience. Wow.
No. I'm just thinking, I don't even know how to handle that, right?
Of course, it stems from the fact that the ʻiwi kupuna that ended up all over the world were stolen.
Yeah, So I was thinking to myself, I always wonder if there were ones that were actually stolen while they were alive, right? Or somebody was just hiking somewhere and wanted to do the whole Django thing. Let me go find something. I always wondered like how different it would be if you actually know the ohana that it belonged to. Is that part of what you guys have to do, is find the ohana, or just? See, I know it's
yeah.
This is all.
Because it's such a sensitive topic, and we're trying to be extremely respectful.
Totally.
So, I think within the context of repatriation, then there is provenance, right? Or hopefully there's provenance where there is records that can at least point to where and how close you might be able to get to the location in which the kupuna was disinterred or taken from a cave, or found and taken away. And so the intent is always to get kupuna to where they were taken from or where they want to be.
Wow. See, I just it blows my mind of this, because, and of course the purpose of this, why we do culture, is because most people, like we were saying earlier, they think Hawaii, right? And and not for our Kanaka viewers, but the non-Kanaka viewers and the ones that want to learn, they see mele, they see hula, they see luau, they see these things, but they don't realize there's way more kuleana to us than it is, and that's why I like it, because even today, if people go hiking, if they're building something, say if somebody is doing construction, building a house, and they come across something, do they call you folks? How does that work?
Or who? The first call is usually to the HPD or SHPD.
Oh, wow. Okay, of course, yeah. If it turns out that it is somewhat artifacts and then you guys come in, how does that happen? Because there's again, there's all this construction going on the island I'm from, but sometimes they're just like, we'll push them on the side, we don't call nobody. And
I think that's why at the end of the day, as Kanaka ʻŌiwi, I think indigenous peoples all over the world, like, we recognize the importance of relationships. Whether you Kanaka or otherwise, and you're in Hawaii, it's very important to honor the sanctity of this place, and that comes with the responsibility of our kupuna. And so if we have opportunities to talk to people who are in positions of authority and can make decisions, I think, my wheelhouse is education, preschool, albeit preschool. That's always my inclination, is build relationships, educate people, and hopefully you can inspire or affect their mindset and the practices they do going forward.
I love that. Say that again. We have to honor the sanctity
of this place.
So first of all, I'm gonna bring. Can you guys come back again soon when you guys aren't traveling the world? Mahalo for both of you for taking time to be here and sharing. I know it's a sensitive subject when it comes to these things, but I also think at the same time, people need to hear these things. People need to know what's going on, right? Not just we can't just preach to the choir as far as other Kanaka go. People need to know. Again, honor the sanctity of this place. I'm gonna put that on a shirt. So mahalo, you folks. If you're joining us, this is Culturized. Any questions you have, any ideas, mana'o ike, comment down below. Hit the subscribe button, notification button, audio podcasts on all our favorites. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Mahalo. This is Culturized.